I'm going to go dive into the deep waters. And Mohammed is on the line with Evidence for God. How you doing? Thanks for waiting.
Yes, hello, Matt.
Hi, Mohammed.
How are you doing?
Doing very well. How about yourself?
Yes, I'm doing fine. I want to speak about my belief in God, the evidences we Muslims have for God. I told the show before, but I didn't feel my points were very clear in my previous calls.
Sure.
Okay.
So just for clarity, it might be good if you gave like a brief definition of the God that you believe exists. You don't have to go on forever. And then tell us exactly, like start with what you think the best evidence is, because we might have to decide, what should or shouldn't count as evidence, but go ahead.
Okay. As for God, He is a being. He is a being above the world. He is a being with perfect qualities. And this is basically the God of Abraham, who created the world and who maintains it by His will and power. That is who God is, the creator. There are many verses in the Quran which speak about God. There is a very short chapter in the Quran. It is a very valuable chapter because it weighs a third of the Quran actually, and it basically was revealed. We believe when the Meccans, when the tribe of Muhammad ﷺ came to, they were at the time unbelievers in his call. So they came to Muhammad and they said to him, "Describe to us your Lord. What is he made of?" So the Prophet ﷺ recited to them these verses. Say he is God, the One, God the Self-Sufficient. He neither begets nor is born, nor is there to him any equivalent. So that is maybe the shortest you can say definition of who God is.
Well, I was actually the definition you started with as a being. Essentially, you said a perfect being who sustains the world.
Yes.
That's far more specific than just saying God is the one and is self-sufficient. That's a bunch of sophistry that doesn't actually describe characteristics of God. Saying that God is a perfect being that sustains the world, that's a good enough starting place. So I guess what we need is...
I don't believe it's sophistry, Matt, because when we say as-Samad, it means the one on whom everything depends when he doesn't depend on anything. That is the consequence of him being the creator.
Saying that God is the thing upon which everything else is contingent doesn't even get to whether or not it's a being. That's why I'm saying that there's nothing substantive added there. When you've already said that God is a perfect being that sustains the world, you don't have to say he's the one and is self-sufficient and all that, because those are not as specific.
I was reading the verses, actually.
Sure, but I'm just saying that doesn't help us. But if we go with God being this perfect being that sustains the world, then the next thing we need to talk about is what evidence has convinced you that such a being exists. And I'll warn you in advance, there's a bunch of problems. How could you possibly tell whether a being is perfect or not?
Well, basically, the reason we know that God exists is through the evidences and through the signs which He creates in the world. This is as simple as that. There are things which come into existence and things which go out of existence. I'm not convinced that
anything comes into existence or goes out of existence. So far as I can tell, things simply change state. But even if we assume that something comes into existence, how is that evidence that God is the reason it comes into existence?
Can I speak a little bit about, because I believe that many people, if they knew that things come into existence, I think they will accept that there is someone who is bringing them into existence.
Well, okay.
There is something bringing them into existence.
Here's the problem, Mohammed. I'll let you address that. But first of all, saying that if people believed things came into existence, you think they would be convinced that there's a God that's doing it, that's completely irrelevant. What people become convinced of is independent from what people should become convinced of. So if you want to, you can give me an example of something that comes into existence, but at the end of the day, whether something comes into existence or something just changes state and you want to label that as coming into existence,
Yes.
that is separate from how do we know what caused that?
How do we know what caused that?
Yeah, you're saying that.
So
you're saying that. Okay. Like, give me an example of something you think comes into existence.
Okay. I believe that three human beings.
Okay, we'll just go with human beings. Let's just go with me.
Yes.
You think that I came into existence. I think
Yes.
that I am merely a conglomeration and rearrangement of atoms that existed prior to that.
Yes.
But I will agree that this package, this meat sack thinking entity, there was a period in time where Matt didn't exist, and there's a period of time now it does. I think we're just dealing with labels here. But we'll go with me.
No, there's no label, Matt. Just a second. Because you are only the sum of your components. You're the sum of those atoms and components, and if there is a soul, you're the sum of that. You're the sum of whatever is you. Whatever is.
Yes, that's essentially what I'm saying.
Components.
That this big meat sack, this thinking meat sack, is something we call Matt. And your view is that Matt came into existence, and I'm going to set aside that point, because whether we're just talking about Matt as the label for this current state of this arrangement of matter, what I'm saying here is that it doesn't matter to this discussion. You're saying that
it matters very much.
Mohammed, hang on.
Very much, man.
You are saying that I came into existence and somehow this is evidence for God, correct?
I'm saying that because you came into existence, God, therefore God. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's what I asked. So the answer is yes. Please explain how my coming into existence, whether it happened or not, is irrelevant. We can, dicker about whether or not I'm just a rearrangement. Please explain how my coming into existence is evidence for God.
Okay. Basically, there are two ways to know God's existence through his signs. The first
through signs?
Through the signs, observing the signs.
Okay.
Okay. The first is intuitive. So, we believe, as Muslims, and we observe this in many people, and they know God intuitively without need of rational arguments.
Yeah, I reject that wholeheartedly as
that's not evidence.
Yes, I know that.
Okay.
I know that. But if that doesn't work, if that intuition somehow got changed, you have to rely on some rational arguments.
Yes, that's all I care about is rational arguments, but particularly not just rational arguments, but rational arguments supported by evidence. The note here said you had evidence for God, and I've outlined this and specifically asked for the evidence, and instead of giving the evidence, you're telling me that you could know it by intuition or perhaps a rational argument. I want the evidence that shows that my coming into existence is explained, best explained or properly explained by God.
Yes, okay. But promise me that you'll give me time to explain to people why things begin to exist.
I promise you. See, here's the thing.
Okay.
The show has time limits, and so if it's going to take you 40 minutes to get there, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let you speak.
No,
here's the thing. Try not to get sidetracked, because all we want to know is what is the evidence from my coming into existence that necessarily or likely leads to God. Okay.
طيب. First of all, if you come into existence, there are some options which you have to consider. Basically, there is a verse which speaks about this.
I don't care about verses. I don't care about verses.
I know that.
Let's get to evidence.
I'm speaking about a rational argument presented in a verse. So, regardless of whether it is mentioned in the Quran or mentioned in the Bible or mentioned in any book, one has
just present the argument. I don't need the history of it.
Yes. We came into existence. We could not have been brought into existence by nothing. We could not have been brought into existence by ourselves. Therefore, something external must have brought us into existence.
Yeah, here's the thing, though.
Like the attributes, and to come to who that creator is, we have to we have to look at the rational arguments for the attributes of that creator.
We need to pause, because first of all, I came into existence through a process of my parents having sex, and purely of matter and chemicals and natural things. So what you're talking about isn't so much that my coming into existence is evidence for God, but you seem to be suggesting that the existence of people, or the existence of life, must be explained by a God. And and the problem is that you're wrong. The correct...
I don't believe that.
Well, I'm getting ready to explain it to you.
Yes.
At some point in the universe, there wasn't any living thing, correct?
Okay.
And then, at some later point in time, living things existed, correct?
Yes.
Now, how did living things come to exist?
They came into existence. How they came into existence? Through the natural causes which led them to that existence. But the question is who brought them into existence?
No. The question is not who. The question is, what is the explanation? Because when you say who brought them into existence, when you say who brought them into existence, you are presuming that the answer must be a being. And the correct question is, what is the explanation for life? And if it turns out that it's a being, then the being's the right answer. But the only way you can know that it's a being is to actually provide evidence that it is a being. How do you do that?
Yes. There are natural causes in the world.
Correct.
One thing causes another.
Yes.
That is true.
As far as I'm aware, those are the only causes.
No rational person will deny natural causality.
Well, I would agree with you.
How do you get to a being?
How do we get to a being?
How do you get to a non-natural explanation?
The fact that those things come into existence, and this is my claim, and I want to explain it later, the fact that those things come into existence cannot be explained by other things which came into existence.
No. You're asserting that it is not possible for there to be a natural explanation. Do you know everything about the natural world?
I know that there are natural explanations.
Mohammed, you are asserting that there can be no natural explanation for the origin of life. That's what you just said.
No, there can be a natural explanation. No. There must be. I think there is a natural explanation.
Then why a minute ago did you say these things can't be explained by natural explanation?
No, the fact that they come into existence.
Sure.
The temporal origination.
You are saying that the coming into existence of things cannot be explained naturally.
Yes.
How do you know that?
Cannot be explained by another creature.
So who cares? The fact that it does. First of all, my existence is explained by another creature, and the origin of every individual life beyond the initial abiogenesis is explained by it being derived from another natural creature. And as far as we know, while we don't have an explanation for abiogenesis, there's no reason to say that there's not a natural explanation. And yet your entire argument is there cannot be a natural explanation for abiogenesis. Therefore, I'm justified in asserting a supernatural one.
No, I am not saying that at all.
Okay.
I believe in natural causes.
Okay.
I am saying that God is the creator of the cause and the effect.
How do you know that?
Because how do I know that? Because the cause comes into existence and the effect comes into existence. One thing perishes.
So God comes into existence?
No, I'm saying that
if you say that God is the cause of the cause, then that has to come into existence as well. But also,
that is correct. If you mean by cause a natural cause or means or what's the word? Because causes actually. And what do you mean by cause?
Well, right now, I'd like you to get to some actual evidence for God, because so far what you've done is claim that the origin of life cannot be explained by natural explanations, and you can't tell us how you.
Explained that.
No, you didn't.
No, I didn't claim that. I claim that God creates things by their causes. He brings the cause and the effect into existence.
How do you know that?
And how do I know that? Because natural causality exists. It's not
the existence of natural causality does not in any way affirm that there's an external supernatural cause for natural causality.
If those things were eternal, but they are not eternal. And basically, if God, I believe that there are, let's say, events within the Creator.
I no longer care what you believe. I'm asking for evidence, as I have been for quite a while now. What evidence? Not argument. Hang on. Not argument. Not what you believe. You called with evidence for God. And so far, we have gotten nowhere near anything that should count as evidence for God. Do you have any?
Yes, if you just listen to me.
I've been listening to you.
I already know the answer.
All right, you have 2 minutes to present some evidence, because if we keep going in circles about arguments related to causality, that's not evidence.
Okay. If I began to exist, if I have a point in time where I began to exist, there must be something that brought me into existence. Okay? And every action subsisting in me must be equally brought into existence. So if I beget a child, I wouldn't be creating that child. That action would itself be created within me. That is the evidence. Because
that is not evidence. Okay, you don't understand the difference between evidence and an argument. You are making an argument, and it is contingent on your premises being true in order for the argument to be sound. And your premises are essentially assertions, but none of those get you to God. None of those are evidence for God. At the end of the day, what we could say is that, why is there something rather than nothing? And the answer is, we don't know. Maybe it couldn't have possibly been another way, but if you want to say that something had to bring things into existence, you have to actually not only demonstrate that there can be no natural explanation, which you can't do because you don't know everything, or you can demonstrate, or you can demonstrate that there must then be a supernatural explanation, and then after you do that, you would have to demonstrate that the best candidate of all supernatural explanations is God, and you would have to do that by presenting evidence, not just
Yes.
Yeah. So where's the evidence? Because you've wasted a minute and a half.
Basically not. Because things come into existence, it's that simple.
But they don't.
If you realize that things come into existence,
they don't
at the beginning. I'll tell you. I haven't explained why I believe that they do. But if you,
I already granted you. I tried to avoid this earlier. I granted that for the sake of argument, we can assume things come into existence, even though I don't accept that proposition because I think it sets up an equivocation fallacy, which you are using. But even if I grant that things come into existence, the fact that something comes into existence is not evidence for what caused it to come into existence. You have to provide evidence for what the cause is. What is the evidence that God is the cause of things coming into existence?
Otherwise, you're just assuming that God did it. You're saying these things happened, therefore God did it. But how do you get to God did it?
I will ask you 3 questions, Matt. Just 3 sequential questions.
You want to ask? Wait. You want to ask me 3 questions?
Related to the topic.
I don't. Okay. Here's the thing. This isn't a quiz show or an interview. You called to present evidence for God, something you have consistently failed to get close to, and now you want to ask me questions.
No, just to illustrate to you the point.
Go for it. 3 questions.
Okay. Do you believe a creature? Do you accept that a creature cannot possibly create itself?
Yes. Well, no, hang on. Let me revise that. I have no evidence that a creature could create itself. That doesn't mean that I'm convinced that it's not possible.
I don't know what to say. say.
Yeah, I know you don't know what to say. This is the thing. This is the thing about propositional. This is the thing about propositions. This is Mohammed. Stop. This is the thing about propositions and evaluating them. In order for me to say that it's impossible, I would have to. Possibility needs to be demonstrated, and impossibility needs to be demonstrated. So I can't say that I'm convinced that it's impossible. What I can say is I have no compelling evidence to believe that a creature could create itself. I have plenty of evidence that every creature that we've examined or would have access to did not in fact create itself in any sense that we can identify. That does not mean that it's impossible. I can say that the overwhelming evidence is that it is incredibly unlikely, if not impossible, that a creature could create itself. All of those things are plausible when you address the proposition. Question 2.
It is, Matt, it is very irrational to say that things can create themselves.
I didn't say that it was. This is the problem. This is the problem.
It is very irrational. Yes, I'm sorry. It is very irrational to claim that...
I don't give a rat's ass because I didn't claim that, Mohammed. Why are you telling me? You might as well be saying it's irrational to think that the sky is pink and pukes out pea soup. That is as relevant to this conversation as saying that it is irrational. Because here's the thing: it can be irrational for someone to say that it is possible for a creature to create itself, and that tells you nothing about whether or not it is rational or irrational to believe that it is impossible for a creature to create itself. They're two separate propositions.
You don't accept that it is impossible for a creature to create itself. This is where the contention is.
You don't understand, Mohammed. I'm trying to explain to you. Here, there's a jar of gumballs on this.
I listened to your example.
I don't give a rat's ass. I'm doing it again. Do you agree that there's either an even or an odd number of gumballs in here?
I don't know until I count them.
You don't know that there has to be either an even or an odd number of gumballs in here?
No, there has to be either an even or an odd number.
Correct, right?
Mm.
So the number of gumballs in this jar has to be either even or odd, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a rational justification for believing that the number is even?
Not yet.
Sorry?
Not yet. I don't have...
Not yet. Cool. We agree. Now, does that tell me anything at all about whether or not you're convinced that it's odd?
It does.
It does?
No, it doesn't. Because
correct, it doesn't. So if you were to tell me that you are not convinced that the number is even, and I were to say it's irrational for you to think it's odd, wouldn't that be irrelevant?
Mm.
Yeah, it would be.
Because I have an evidence. I have evidence for why things cannot create themselves. That is why.
Now, so evidence for the proposition that creatures have not created themselves is independent from whether or not whether creatures could create themselves. But are you going to get to the second question, or am I going to get to the second caller?
Well, if you accept that a creature cannot create itself, then the second question would be whether you accept that the sum of those creatures can create themselves.
No, here's the thing. First of all, we need to get to your second question, but we don't have to do this in the abstract or in the universal. I can agree that I did not, as far as I'm aware, create myself. And so the question then is, how did I come into being? And the answer is, my parents had sex.
Yes, this is what I'm saying. I'm coming to this question, a specific question.
Okay.
You're basically saying that your parents created you. Yeah.
No, I'm not saying that my parents created me. I'm saying that my parents had sex, and the natural process of chemicals and matter interacting resulted in something that we eventually labeled Matt.
Yes, so there was an action within your parents that gave rise to you.
Yes, and can we stop talking about my parents fucking, because it's a little disturbing for a lot of people.
I'm sorry about that.
That's all right.
I'm just saying that when parents beget, you see, this is an action.
Yes, sex is an action.
Yeah.
We know Matt's parents exist.
This is the act of begetting.
Yeah.
The creature, the human being, the baby which is born, okay?
Maybe.
He results from
or she.
that action. Yeah, he or she. It results from that action.
Sure. Sometimes,
yes, it results from that action. But you cannot say that that act is an act of bringing that baby into existence.
Correct. And not only did I not say that, I said the exact opposite. And I began by saying that this notion of coming into existence is a little bit of a mind game that we play by labeling new formations of matter with new labels.
No. I'm saying
yes. That's what I.
That things come into existence.
No, we don't. No, we don't know that things come into existence. What we know is that matter changes patterns, and we change the labels we apply to it. But at the end of the day, I'm in agreement that I didn't create myself, and the explanation is that my parents had sex. What is I don't know, are we on question 2 or question 3?
No, it's question 2. I'm going to question 3 just to demonstrate that your parents did not create you or bring you into
I already agreed that my parents didn't create me. Why the hell do we need a question to... Go ahead. What's the question? Ask me the question. Ask me the question, Bridgekeeper. I'm not afraid.
Yes, it's okay. But the assumption is that we came into existence. That's the assumption. So if you don't accept this assumption, the questions, they wouldn't make sense.
Well, I think what you mean by come into existence, I agree actually happened, even though I wouldn't call it coming into existence. I would call it a change in the state of matter. But are you going to ask me the third question, or are we moving on?
Yes, if the sum of those creatures, they cannot create themselves.
Jesus Christ.
Then the sum cannot create a part of itself. It cannot create a part of itself.
Are you saying it's not possible for two people to have sex and for that to naturally result in a baby?
No, I'm saying that if the creature cannot give rise to itself and the sum of human beings cannot create themselves, how can a human being create you? How can the sum of the...
I'm not created.
Wouldn't be enough.
The answer to your dilemma is that I am not created. I am the natural product of human... I am the natural... I'm going to hang up. I'm going to hang up. I am the natural product of humans procreating. There's nothing supernatural or spectacular about it. And saying that I can't create life just by going, oh, there's my offspring, that it requires some physical process, doesn't in any way lead. Your thing is the creature can't create itself, and this is true for the individual, so it must be true for the whole, which, by the way, is a fallacy. The characteristics of individuals does not necessarily apply to the whole. It doesn't mean that no human being could do this.
But in some cases,
oh, my God.
Doesn't it? In some cases, it does not.
In some cases, it does not. Do you have evidence that it doesn't?
It does in some cases. For example, if you have...
Well, if it does in some cases, then your argument's moot already.
No, it does in some cases. The fallacy of composition doesn't apply.
Does it apply to human beings procreating?
It doesn't apply.
How do you know? How do you know? Do you have examples of human beings creating life other than through procreation?
No. I'm saying that if your components have a beginning, then you must have a beginning. The sum must have a beginning. That's what I'm saying.
So God had a beginning? So God had a beginning?
How does this relate to this?
Well, I mean, I realize that we're not components of God, but you're advocating for God as some sort of necessary cause.
Yes.
Okay. How do you know that God is how do you know that there is a cause that is external to nature, and how do you know that cause is God?
I don't call God a cause. That would be the philosophers who call him a cause.
Okay, then I'll talk to philosophers. Thanks. Because if you're going to present philosophical arguments for God's existence and never present any evidence, you should learn what evidence is, not just the argument, and then bow out when I get to the difficult questions as if I need to talk to philosophers, then we'll have philosophers call in, because I'm convinced that even the theologians that understand this stuff better than you or I do are also a monumental waste of time. But
please don't call in if you're philosophers.
At least not while John's here.
Yeah, my eyes glaze over.
Just send me an email. Yeah,
it's basically all just things happen, therefore a God must have done it, but no connection between the two, no explanation of where that leap.
Well, he didn't get there because he didn't understand the subject or the language. Essentially, this was a version of the argument of of a couple different ones, but one of them would be contingency, that human beings are contingent. Like, I am contingent on the laws of the universe and the physical processes that resulted in me. And yet, if you keep going back to wherever the first life rose, which is why I went to abiogenesis, then it seems like you have to have life from non-life. Cool. The theists want to say that life from non-life is not possible. There's no way for them to demonstrate that. There's plenty of evidence that not only is it actually possible, but it happened, even if we don't fully understand the mechanism. But the fact that we don't understand the mechanism is what allows them to say, well, you can't create yourself, and your parents couldn't create themselves, and if you keep tracking this back, whatever the first life was couldn't create itself. Well, first of all, we don't know that. Because whatever the first life was may have been substantially different, and it wouldn't be creating itself in the sense of, here's a mind saying, I think I'm going to make myself come into being now. That is absurd.
Because it already exists.
On that level, at least with life as we understand it, it is outside the realm of physical possibility so far as we can tell. You'd have to demonstrate that it was possible, which is why I made that clarification. But then the next step is to say, then there must have been something that is not bound by natural law which started this off. And he doesn't want to call God a cause because he at least understands that runs into problems, which is why for some theologians it is about God created the physical world and the set of rules that then leads to causation and allows this sort of thing to happen. So that way they get to, hey, whatever abiogenesis was, life from non-life, it didn't necessarily mean that God stuck his finger in some goo and, created self-replicating molecules. It just means that God created the environment that allows it to do it. So it just keeps pushing this step back further and further. At the end of the day, the question is very simple. What is the explanation for the origin of life? As far as I can tell, our answer is we don't know. If you have an answer, you actually have to demonstrate why that answer should be rationally considered based on evidence to be the best explanation. And you cannot offer supernatural explanations without demonstrating that they're real, that they're possible. You can't say God is the best answer without demonstrating that a God is even possible or real or anything else. Oh, well, because if you try to do that, and I know some people get frustrated by this, even Blake got frustrated by it. At the end of the day, what you're saying is we don't have a natural explanation. I'm going to assume that therefore there cannot be a natural explanation. And if you rewind the show, you'll hear him say that there can't be a natural explanation for X. So the fact that we don't have a natural explanation doesn't mean there can't be one. That's the first fallacious leap. Then they go from that fallacious leap of there can't be one to presume that therefore there must be a supernatural explanation. How did they rule? I mean, granted, it seems that natural and supernatural would be exhaustive, so they're going to leap to this. But they don't yet know that supernatural explanations are possible. They have to demonstrate the way a causal link between a supernatural cause and that. And then they take the extra step to say that now that we can assert that it's a supernatural cause, God is that supernatural cause. How do you know it's not life-creating pixies? Granted, there's supernatural pixies who aren't bound by natural laws, and then from that step, from God, then you get to it's specifically my version of the God in my religion who led to this.
Because he didn't just call whatever that supernatural cause is God. He said he had evidence for a specific God.
Yeah.
The one that...
Allah.
Well, he didn't say Allah, but
his version of Allah in particular.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the same things that we get to when we're talking about with Christians who are relying on the Bible. They fall into different categories. There's the young earth and creationists, there's old earth creationists, and so they're denying or accepting various parts of science. But when granted, I haven't debated William Lane Craig because he won't. But when he presents something like the Kalam cosmological argument, there are problems with that. Number one is that argument does not have as its conclusion, therefore God exists, because God doesn't exist in any of the premises. So there's a big bait and switch there. Everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. Maybe, maybe not. The universe began to exist. Maybe not. Therefore, the universe had a cause for its existence. That is the Kalam cosmological argument. And then it is, and the nature of this cause has to be this and this and this and this, and that sounds a lot like God, so we'll go with God. I mean, it's garbage at least from the universe, therefore the universe has a cause. It's garbage from there to whatever God they believe in. And if you are a follower of Yahweh or Allah or Jesus or whatever, and when you are in debates and you are there to present the case for your God. When you defend a generic God, you failed. And actually, I had a really good idea. It didn't come to fruition. I was going to do a team debate with Hina Databoy, who's an ex-Muslim. We were going to debate a team of Christian apologists. And anytime they presented an argument for their Christian God, which would similarly apply to the Muslim God, she was just going to get up and point out that applies to the Muslim God as well. I thought we were here to debate Jesus. And then, I don't have to say anything because they haven't done anything. And once you demolish all their arguments that are just generic-y things and actually get them to try to defend the specific doctrine, then maybe we'd have a new debate.